Hey Jayanth, good to see you back.
Leslie, good to see you after 2 weeks.
Yeah, lovely. And before I ask you my favorite question, that how was your week? I'd like to introduce Umakant Soni to our viewers and listeners. Friends, we have with us today Umakant Soni, who is the chairman of AI Foundry. He was also the former CEO of ARTPARK and many other roles. But more importantly, we should understand him as a person who is now working on the AI and building the AI and generative AI ecosystem in India, and also has funds a lot of deep tech companies. So I mean, he's the man to have around when you're in such a situation where generative AI companies, where entrepreneurs want to set up generative AI companies, and every company wants to become an AI company. So
Right.
welcome, Umakant.
Yep, thanks a lot, Leslie, for having me here. Thanks, Jayanth. And
Pleasure.
it's fantastic to
Yeah.
talk to you. And of course, it's been some time. I mean, I started 15 years back, trying to build a chatbot company out of India in 2009-10. It was super early. There were only four guys across the globe which were trying to do chatbots, and nobody understood the term. In fact, they used to tell me that it's a negative term. And I remember that at that point of time, Siri had just got launched at that time, and then it was bought by Apple for $400 million.
Right.
And we were very curious sitting here in India. I was like, yeah, wow, this is a company, they haven't actually got a proper chatbot to work, and they got bought for $400 million. And, that was the time when actually I realized that ecosystem is such a big thing. We have capital. It's misallocated. We do have capital.
Yeah.
We do have talent. I think Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella are leading the AI revolution. So definitely we do have talent there. But what we don't have is the ecosystem. So actually, last 15 years, I've been trying to build that kind of ecosystem in India. Of course, funded, supported, close to 19 plus AI companies so far. I mean, I was yesterday having a meetup, iSpirit meetup, and we were actually chatting with whole bunch of AI startups, and I realized that except one, almost all have been funded or supported by me. So yes, it feels great. I think definitely now AI has become mainstream in the sense that people are talking about it, and they don't change the discussion topic when you start talking about AI or any of the exciting things that you see or you want to talk about. So definitely from that perspective, a lot has changed. Still, I see that we are still in very early infancy. I mean, although people are talking about regulating AI, but it's still a baby. It's not even an adolescent, and we are discussing what we will do with it when it gets married, or to whom it should get married, and all
Wow,
of that.
Umakant,
So yeah, so it's early days.
in just 5 minutes, you summarized everything that I
Everything,
wanted to say. So no, I think we have ended the podcast. No, but jokes apart, I mean, it was a lovely summary of what you have been doing,
Yeah.
and of course, you're also IIT Kanpur's alumni, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have got that whole.
So that's the place where I realized that I've reached my limits of natural intelligence, because you're around so many bright people, and you realize that your only hope is that probably working on
Machines.
AI to
Yeah.
support you,
Machines.
right?
Hoping
Yeah,
that the machines will supplement that your
yeah, exactly.
intelligence.
Yeah, and maybe in another 10 years or so, 900 million plus, Indians might be doing just that.
Yeah.
Correct.
And
Yeah, but before we get into this deep dive, as which we do, normally the kind of stuff that we have is, I asked Jayanth how his week was. So poor fellow must be feeling left out today.
No.
Jayanth, how was your week? What did you do?
Well, it was two weekends since we missed. So the first
Yeah,
weekend,
absolutely.
I went out on a Sunday morning breakfast drive in a BMW M5 competition with a fellow entrepreneur. And
Lovely.
you will love this. I saw about 20 plus liter class, motorcycles there. The
Oh my.
Hayabusas, the Ninja 1000s and ZX10Rs on a Sunday morning drive.
Don't do
So
this
that
to me.
I'll send you some videos.
Oh God.
And last weekend, we were in Mysore with the family. The daughter finished her 9th grade. She scored 90%. So we were staycationing. So
Oh, lovely.
just a family outing last weekend. So
Yeah.
2 weekends. Yeah.
I was in Pune actually the whole of this week. In fact, I just came back. So I was attending. So I had to do a panel discussion at the Indian Science Fest. So this is, a motley gathering of all the scientists and researchers
Nice.
and all. It's amazing stuff that they do. And of course, the point was even at the Science Festival, one of the topics was India GPT,
Mm-hmm.
and how to build India's AI and generative AI ecosystem.
Ecosystem.
And of course, I mean, most of the discussion was around India LLMs and AI and ethics, bias, etc. So pretty interesting. But what I liked also was that a lot of these speakers, I think, were relating. Like somebody was doing, maths with Kathak dance, for
Mm-hmm.
instance. So the relationship, understanding
Yeah.
mathematics to Kathak dance. So I thought, pretty esoteric kind of stuff. Of course, the other one was, talking about AI and material science, how AI is helping. I mean, the Google example was given, but a lot of, how AI is helping, generative AI and AI are helping
Discover
develop new
and develop.
materials. Yeah, develop new materials on the
Yeah.
fly,
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course. So some amazing kind of subjects that we were dealing with, and very interesting to see. It was sort of very heartening to see that there's this whole. So all the people who I'm used to a crowd. I think all of us are used to during our events. We are used to CXOs coming for those events, but here you had small teeny weeny children coming out there. Yeah, I mean, even a 6-year-old kid, 10-year-old kids, college-going kids, graduates, and all of them coming, looking at the experiments, immersing themselves, and more important, asking amazing questions. I was like
Right.
shocked to hear, like, I mean, somebody was talking about how we launch satellites,
Mm-hmm.
the space tech kind of stuff that was going on. These guys were, I think it was a 12-year-old kid asking very pointed questions on spacecraft. Like, what is the kind of fuel you use? What is the kind of weight of the thing? So even the speakers were pretty impressed with the kind of research. And, it was not sort of choreographed or anything. It was like impromptu. You could make out from the kind of questions that same hesitant child wants to ask a question, the curiosity, and asking just the any type of question. And it was amazing the way people were answering them. The speaker took a lot of pain, because I think this is the future of our country.
Oh, definitely.
So of
Definitely.
course,
Sounds like a very,
Umakant,
very fun and exciting format.
oh, a very humbling one also, because
Sure.
you know that there's so much that you don't know.
Yeah.
Just when you think that you know something, it's a very humbling experience. There's so many smart people around. Like I bumped into Siddharth Garg, who is a professor of NYU,
Mm.
who is actually he has developed a LLM to enhance the efficiency of chip design, for
Mm-hmm.
instance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's called Verigen. So typically, like LLMs, I mean, those who design chips, they use this programming language called Verilog,
Right.
which is
Right.
a
Very
sort of, yeah, and it's much more difficult than even C, for instance. So here you have an LLM that is actually learning it, so I just asked him a very simple question. I said, okay, if an LLM can learn Verilog, tomorrow it will master it, and tomorrow it might even, what happens to the jobs of all these developers? He's saying, forget the developers. What happens to my job? He said, I don't know whether I'll have a, and he was very serious about it.
Yeah.
So, very interesting encounters. Umakant, how was your week?
Well, it was quite interesting and fruitful. I mean, of course, this weekend I actually was talking with my elder daughter. She's now turned 16, and she's at that age when she's thinking about what she wants to do next. And and she's of course, pressured by listening to all their, her peers talking about exams and other things. And I was telling her that, yeah, exams are fun, but don't depend too much upon it, because maybe ChatGPT might make it extinct and all. But maybe, the right way to think about is like, what is it that you really, what's a big problem that you want to work on, right? And can you go deeper into it, right? Can you investigate and build your, your education is kind of like tool set to, attack a problem, or, really go deeper into it. So I was actually telling her that, hey, exams, I think at least AI is proving that exams aren't everything, right? There's a lot more to learning than, just exams. And sadly, if you were to ask me, our education system, you sort of like turned this around, and going away from curiosity to just nailing the exam, right? And so it was a fun conversation with her, and of course conversations with teenagers, they're always fun. The other part was like, I was this morning actually having a chat with one of our friends, from Sweden, and of course we're sharing notes about what happened in Davos, and of course AI has been a big area of focus, and of course that's Davos, and we don't really, we think, oh, it's a rich boys club. And but today morning I also saw a picture of Lord Ram, deep fake about him, smiling, opening his eyes and twinkling, and it was so well done. And I was actually like, wow, amazed, and I could see the reaction that people had. It was on Instagram, and I could read the likes that it was getting, and it was like I was just blown off. I was like, wow, I mean, for me, who've been in this space for a long time, and of course I understand what it is, and it was actually done very well, very aesthetically pleasing and everything. But it's also posed a deep question to me. I mean, we are heading to this election year, right? And deepfakes are getting better, and of course, Trump shared one of him being praying in a church, and my sense is that we're really not ready for this. I mean,
And
the
yesterday it
level of
happened, right? I mean,
sophistication.
in New Hampshire, people got robocalls in Joe Biden's voice asking them not to go out and vote in the Democratic primary. I mean, generative AI and deepfakes have already started,
Voice cloning.
yeah, exactly.
Voice training.
Voice cloning.
And
With the
yeah,
elections, what we were all fearing 2024 it will happen. It already happened yesterday. So,
yeah, and I think it's just the beginning. And my sense is that, and actually I recall this because so I was born in Bhopal, and when the Bhopal gas tragedy happened, I mean, during that week, I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
unfortunately had to be there because my
yeah.
aunt was getting married that week, and I saw that tragedy very close up. And I remember that even for a week, and of course that Netflix documentary made it a lot more real for a lot many
Railwayman.
people.
Yeah.
Railwayman. And by the way, it's amazing if you haven't seen it, but it's also was very painful for me to watch. I had to
I can
really go
imagine.
through it because it brought up a lot of memories. And I was thinking about this, like, you know, if I really look at it, right, the people in Bhopal did not know what hit them, right? Where they should go, where they should hide, what they should do, what they should not do. Nobody knew it, and it affected, close to 500,000 people at that time, which was half the population of Bhopal. I mean, 30,000 people just got gassed. I mean, and maybe countless more. I mean, that was the official numbers thrown around, right? So imagine if we have a technology which is going to impact us from all the sides, right? We don't really know what it is doing, how it has been built, what's the impact of it, how do we even mitigate it, right? It's like, you are walking into a crisis completely blind. And that is what I see, that unless we build the ecosystem in India, unless we build these tools in India, unless we actually know how to manage these LLMs, build these LLMs, test these LLMs, it's so hard. And that's why I was very happy today that one of my batchmate is building this company, Raga AI.
Right.
Is about AI testing. I mean, he just of course now the
Closed
funding
funding.
news
Yeah.
became public.
Public.
But my sense is that there's not enough of them. I mean, there's not enough of them happening in India. We are really not prepared for this, and it shouldn't be like Bhopal gas tragedy happening at the scale of India. I mean, that would be really, really tragic, because we have the most amount of talent which are going after AI. So I think we have to really remove all our blinders and accept that AI is going to be here, and all would have to work, whether it's industry, whether it's academia, whether it's government. We have to work together to build that ecosystem. And there's no like, okay, I will watch and see what happens. No, you have to jump in now. The world is flat. I mean, I saw the statement which came out from Davos that, yeah, of course, the US companies are going to be, they're going to obliterate everyone because they are, literally putting AI underneath their sails. So I think this world is very, very flat. And I think that's a real message that we should take in, that whether we choose to accept it or not, whether even if we ignore it or we try to ignore it, it's going to hit us in form of deep fakes, hitting our elections, potentially ruining our democracy. Maybe a country with so much diversity that we have, it's like so easy for me to maybe create apprehension and challenges in the minds of whoever you might be, right? And then you could use this diversity that we have seen is probably plays as an advantage for us as a nation, could be against us. And you don't even have to cross borders to do that. Now, as you said, right, like I could make a robocall.
No, I'm actually glad you brought up that point, because just recently, I think Bill Gates and Sam Altman, they were having that podcast.
Yeah.
So I think Bill Gates was asking Altman, like, what does he think about this technology wave? Because of course we have seen many such technology waves, right from the steam engine to, and this is a typical analogy that is given. But and I think even this point that Altman is now has made with Bill Gates is also a point that others also have pointed out. This technology wave is not like the others. This is like too rapid. The incredible. So even Altman said that the incredible pace, what is scaring him, and I think he was genuine this time around, that the pace at which this technology is moving is incredible. And as you rightly said, that if we do not have, forget the guardrails in place, but we should at least understand what's happening. So here, many people don't even understand. Just when they were trying to wrap their head around AI, suddenly this beast called generative AI came up. And then now you are having generative AI and AI. It's a very lethal combination. Then Gen AI is getting, merged with a lot of applications with the industrial metaverse, Gen AI with robotics, AI and Gen AI with other kind of, whether it's IoT and all the other, the confluence and convergence of technologies is taking place, which is so formidable. Jayanth, you also are seeing a lot of this. I mean, we have spoken about this earlier too. So,
No, absolutely. I mean, this evolution is is happening at an enormous speed, and even people who are working in it, day in and day out, even researchers, they claim that it's extremely difficult to keep up as to the number of innovations from different parts of the world that are coming in. I mean, we were talking about foundation models. There's an NVIDIA product manager's TED talk that's come out where he talks about foundation agents, where the models now create new realities, right? So it's coming from every every corner. But I think it makes sense to take a step back and look at the pattern as to what is happening, right? I mean, if you look at the traditional AI, traditional AI was, you and I talked a lot about this, Leslie. We said how it was a one-trick pony. It all depended on backward prop and, back prop, and required data, right? From data to generative AI, the dependency moved from a lot of data to a lot of, GPU power, okay, computing power. Okay, so the dependency moved from one to the other, and hence now the companies which can have this power, okay, earlier to the companies which have the power now have moved. But having said that, just like during the conventional AI days, there was a lot of work being happening on small data technologies, right? Right now, you and I talked about it. RetNets, we were talking about, how generative AI can be worked on, smaller computing power, the need for smaller computing power. So those kind of disruptions, those kind of, new models and architectures are happening. And if you remember last week in Davos, to some extent, this is exactly what Jan LeCun also talks about, the need for new models and architectures.
Yeah, but in that context, Umakant, I mean, you would like to shed some light because you have been working very closely with all these guys who are actually trying to create foundational models in India. When I say foundation models, I do not mean the frontier models. I'm talking of maybe they are smaller ones with a few billion parameters, but at the same time, they're enough from a point of view of localization and the need for Indian languages, whether it's the 22 official languages and the thousands of dialects that we have. So Makat, I know that you have been working closely with some of these guys, so you can
Yeah, so I
shed
think, I
some
mean, of
light
course,
on.
yesterday I was sitting together with Vivek, who's building Savam, and is a good friend. And finally, they've got some compute going, which is was very happy to know about that. But there's still the other challenge that you spoke about, right? Data. I mean,
Yeah.
these foundation models are super hungry, right? They need, you know, trillions of parameters. I mean, if you really want to get them to work properly, then you need those trillion token plus, right? And that's a real challenge, right? Like we don't even have, uh, forget about trillion. We hardly have, billion, data points. And even if you go to Wikipedia, we don't even have that many tokens. So we literally have to cross train or train with variation on the same kind of data, which is actually very fairly limited. The second challenge that I have, of course, the compute being so super expensive, right? So if your compute, so if I see this, right, like today we're working on 20 watts, right, essentially, right, as a human being. And right now, the best, some of these are, we are needing 20 megawatts, I mean, 10,000 servers to GPU farms to actually train these, right? So it's a massive gap, right? And what it does is that it actually it creates a challenge, because then if you have to make it work economically, right, then you need to have a global audience, right? So that's very important point to understand, because so if I'm going to spend $100 million building a foundation model up, right, in terms of compute and everything, then I need to have use cases which can allow me to recoup that cost and maybe make 10 times or 20 times more money, right? That actually limits the places where you can go and experiment, right? Because the market has to be so deep, right? If you're OpenAI, of course you're blowing billions of dollars. Microsoft is giving you money, and you can afford to do that because the whole world is kind of like your playground, right? And Microsoft is a very deep investor and is like, okay, you go and experiment and I'll back you up. Anyway, I've got Azure and all of these servers lying, so I can make use of it. But for a startup, right, if that startup is going to spend 100 million in compute, they have to raise. And if they have to raise, then they have to also raise against a economic model, right? Because otherwise people won't put in money, right? I mean, all are very smart venture investors, right? So right now, the way the whole story is, it is way too expensive for the Indian use cases to emerge deeply, right? That's one challenge that I see, unless we're able to bring the computing cost down. And we have to do it. I think for India, if we want AI story to work for India and to enable India to work for the world, we have to bring down the cost of computing. And maybe we need to grow our own version of AWS, which is maybe 5x cheaper or something like that, right? But we have to figure out how do we do that, right? And maybe of course, we are trying to work on something around that. But I think that is a compute innovation that could potentially come from India, right? And imagine if we are able to get it to work in India at Indian cost points. And the kind of, so yesterday we were in this deep discussion, we were having a startup roundtable, and we fortunately had the METI secretary come down to Bangalore, and he was able to listen to all of us. And we were actually saying, hey, we've got 1.4 billion human brains, right? It's a massive number. I mean, the kind of data that all of us are outputting is fundamentally at any scale much larger than anybody else, right? So imagine if you're effectively able to roll out AI at that scale and get feedback loop at that scale, right? And that is actually a very promising aspect. So that if you can democratize AI, get the compute cost down, roll it out to 1.4 billion people, get everybody to then give feedback, and align it to the human society and make it work at the lowest price point, then we could take it to, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa. I mean, yesterday I was sitting with one of my good friend, Tathagat, who runs Siktopal, which is applying AI to pathology, right?
Yeah.
And they have now
Yeah.
got 130 labs working live on them, right? And the kind of data that they're getting their hands on is crazy. And their devices, I mean, yesterday Sharad was recounting that very nice incident that this was the only device which was working in Ladakh, right? So now imagine this, that, now, of course, India is not the only place where their devices are working. They're working in Bangladesh, in other countries as well, right? Now they've got CE approval, they've got FDA. So now they're going global, right? In fact, that's a big frontier that they're going to cross, is they're going to internationalize themselves. So what I see is a very clear trail. If we are able to create AI, democratize AI at India's scale, we would actually end up creating something which could be really game changing, not just for India, but also for globally. But we have to step out innovate everyone. Our government would have to become an early adopter of AI and say that, hey, I'm going to embrace it, right? Because only when a government embraces it, right, because they only have the mandate to reach out to 1.4 billion people, right? If Sarvam is building something, or there are other, LLMs getting built, multimodal LLMs getting built, the biggest use is that because you have so much diversity in India, right? How do you make it work across, right? And government have to do that. They have to do that. I mean, they have to take care of every single newborn baby that is out there. It's very expensive if you only have human forms doing it, right? I mean, or for that matter, we were very surprised when we were in early days of Siktopal that there were only 90 pathologists in a state like Kerala, right?
I would like to interject over here because there are a couple of points that you raised on data. Now, data is a very interesting thing that we've always been talking
Yeah.
about. So, one thing we are saying, okay, fine, when it comes to India, we're saying that we do not have enough data sets. Now, that is a very serious problem. Even Bhashni's data sets are not adequate because they are meant more for translation, everything. And of course, all the CDAC data, etc., has all been sort of merged with. I mean, today you have that umbrella organization called Bhashni, which is under MeitY. But having said that, the data sets basically are just not adequate. And even globally, when we talk about foundation models, we are always complaining about data, saying that now we'll have to move to synthetic data. But at the same time, Jan Kun, I think, made a very interesting point, saying that we have not tapped into the video data.
And we don't know how to read it.
We
And
don't know how to.
machines don't know how to
So
read
it's
it.
not that we do not have a data. It's just that we do not know at this point in time and how to tap. So it's not that we cannot, because look at the kind of that the video data would be 10x that of the normal kind of data. So because here we are just dealing with the internet kind of data, the
textual data,
text-based data. So I think we have to be just for the benefit of our
even for tapping the data, you still need compute. I mean,
you need compute.
Chart yesterday was like
and what
images and videos.
Yeah.
I mean, the
in fact,
90%. I mean, even if Sarvam, my friend Vivek, has raised so much money, I know 90% of that money is going to go to compute.
Computing,
I can imagine.
Right?
No, and also Jan made a point saying that we don't have a way to read the image and the video data to train the models, right? I mean, that architecture itself needs to be developed. But I hear your point, Leslie. You're urging Umakant and the ecosystem is building to think about innovating in that direction. Okay, Umakant, I have a question. You know what you mentioned. I mean, in the early part of the problem statement that you were talking about, it sounded to me as the same problem statement that we had a few years back when we were talking about building supercomputers, right? I mean, you build these supercomputers, you need to have the use cases and applications and the business model to justify, the expense, right? But you also mentioned that building India innovation, India scale, 1.4 billion people, okay, India unit economics, most importantly, okay, if you can actually make it work for India unit economics, then we could, scale it globally, or at least to the Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Latin America and Africa sort of countries. Okay, my question, Umakant, is what are those top 1, 2, 3 industry sectors or use cases, okay, that you see that where the innovation in AI at the foundational model level, at the foundation compute innovation level could come out of India, that could, number one, be make sense for the Indian market and also the adjacent markets or the similar markets that you talked about.
Yeah, so I think health is definitely one big one. I mean, the kind of data, health data, and the diversity that we have in health data is amazing. A friend of mine is building this genomics map. I mean, the kind of diversity he's finding at the genomics level, and it's off the chart. We are like 10x more diverse because of the fact that we have not, because of the caste system, right? I mean, those genetics are very, very different than what you find across the globe. Then if I look at, so healthcare is definitely one. If we can adopt a leapfrog way in which how we tackle healthcare, right? Because we realized during COVID, we built that X-ray Setu, right? And where you could take a picture of your X-ray, send it to us on WhatsApp, and we'll send you a report back. All in matter of minutes. And it literally saved so many lives. We got so many feedback loops at ARTPARK that, it was super helpful. It even spread to 20 plus countries, right? I mean, when we checked the logs, realized, oh my gosh, we're serving 20 plus countries we don't even know, right? Because they're all sending it on WhatsApp, and we were not tracking where are you coming from and everything, right? So we see that healthcare is going to be one big area where, because India has diversity in terms of data, like if I look at what Siktipol is doing, right? They have dengue, they have malaria. All of these things are very rare to find in US, right? So they will outcompete any startup that happens there. Or Niramay, which is looking at breast cancer screening using thermal images. So here they have virgin stage 1 cancer, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, because they're not getting detected, right? Whereas if you go to Europe or US, right, it's impossible to find stage 3 or stage 4 virgin cancers which have not been detected earlier, because there was such a massive screening program, right? So their AI is going to be way better than anybody else, right? So healthcare diversity of data is very, very interesting and important. And I think that's where the Indian innovations could emerge. Second, I feel, is the education sector. We are the only country in the world which has got 300 million young brains which are going through school, right? And it's a massive opportunity for us because in some sense they are growing up as AI is maturing, right? So there is, a very interesting opportunity to, make a co-tutor, co-pilot available to them, right? To play with, to, ask questions with, and that is, and if you can do that, you would be setting the standards, right? And that is something that I see is going to be phenomenal. Third area that I see, which could be really big, is financial sector. We are not realizing, with UPI, we actually have a very advanced, fintech stack with us. The India stack, what it has done. In fact, last week I was talking to somebody in Europe, and they're looking at, one of the portfolio companies. They've been developing this, data as an asset model. Okay, and they want to leverage that and create a bank in potentially in Europe, right? Now that is so interesting because if you can leverage the large population that you have here, the advantage, especially in areas where you could be ahead, right? And you take it across the globe, you could actually have potential winners. See, foundational models, believe me, they're still not foundational yet. Okay, we're still at the very beginning of that. There's so many guardrails and so many things that you have to dumb them down with, makes you realize that, hey, they're not foundational yet, right? So my sense is that in a year or year and a half's time, you're going to see these vertical foundational models, which are going to be a lot more better, because you could then, I mean, how could I dumb a chat GPT down, for healthcare in same way as I can do it for fintech? It's impossible. Both are different domains. I mean, human intelligence doesn't work that way, right? How can I expect AI to work differently, right? I mean, foundational models are still trained by the data that we are giving them, right? So my sense is that we're going to see multimodal, we're going to see, vertical foundational models, and they are going to be the ones which will actually take off in terms of adaptation. And that is where I see that India is my favorite term, right? It's a supermarket of problems, right? We have all kinds of problems. I mean, healthcare is a problem. We don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough teachers. I grew up in a place, right? And for 4 months, they would actually close the school because, the school was being used by people who lost their, house because of flood, right? and this still is the case there, right? So that's the place where we are coming from, right? So we have no other option but to leapfrog. And so we have data, we have desperation, okay, in terms of adoption, right? So my sense is that maybe the foundational model we are lagging behind, but my sense is that India will catch up in vertical foundational models, and the kind of data, the
Interesting.
kind of, and if we can, and for that to happen, we have to build a leading AI ecosystem in India with a lower cost compute, with a very supportive regulation, which is going to say, hey, I don't care about the rest of the world, but for me, I have to leapfrog using AI. I have to
But
have a government which is going to be an early adopter.
So Umakant and Jayanth,
And we have to build our own tools.
Yeah, so I think because you have brought up these interesting questions, but time and I can see we are already talking about I mean, typically the conversation was about the lack of computing power, which is a genuine thing. I mean, I think there are no two opinions on that. But having said that, simultaneously also spoke about the strength of the design ecosystem that we have.
Right.
So we are very good in semiconductor designs. So, the whole thought now that is going on, because I was even at the Indian Science Fest with all the researchers I was talking to, and I mean, all those companies that are actually, building these kind of India LLMs, the foundation models, if we, because typically some of them are being actually built from scratch. So they're not using Llama, they're not using any of the kind of other foundation models. They're not building and layering it on that. They're actually building it from scratch with the data sets. So, of course, they are using GPUs from other places, which is a big problem that Umakant has pointed. But having said that, is it that we can, design these chips out here and get them, done in every foundry the way, NVIDIA and all are actually, because NVIDIA doesn't make its own chip, it designs.
No, I think India should do that. I think that's definitely the thing to do. But, any serious chip effort is 2.5 years from here to take
it's a multi-year effort.
Yeah.
$50 million minimum, right?
Yes,
and it has to be backed by another supporting $500 million of investment by the government, which is saying, okay, I'm going to create talent around it. I'm going to push everything, push all the IITs, push all the IIC has a great stuff going on. So they have to do it. So there is no, I think that has to go in parallel. Okay.
But
I think,
just today, I think
having said that, it's not easy. It's not easy to get to where NVIDIA is there today, or AMD is going to be there tomorrow.
So absolutely,
But having said that, absolutely, I agree. If we are going to have 900 million people using AI to enhance their human abilities, right? We should build that ecosystem somehow. I don't know how we are going to do that, whether we collaborate with NVIDIA or any of these guys and build a version of it. But definitely, I think the hardware has to evolve together with software. There's no other way.
No, what I was pointing out was that I think it was today itself that Rajiv Chandrasekhar has been quoted that, okay, he's raising something, or rather he's allocating something like 10,000 crore for supercomputing and quantum computers. So I thought that was one step in the right direction as such. And then, of course, sourcing of GPUs, etc. I think whether the government can do it or should companies be doing it, that's a big question mark, because I think all
the thing around silicon is always about ecosystem, and it's always, and the ecosystem needs to grow. And that's exactly where India has lost in the past in so many years and decades, because we definitely don't have one or two elements of the key links in the chain. Okay. But Umakant, it's very interesting what you mentioned earlier in the question. You said India is a supermarket of problems. We have data and desperation, right? Very interesting, choice of words. And I completely agree with you with at least healthcare. The last 3 years of my life I spent in healthcare. I did one of the biggest population health registry programs along with government of Tamil Nadu and Google, the biggest in the world. And the data, that we can get and what we can build using that is extremely interesting. So health, education, and financial services are the three things that you mentioned. And in terms of the innovation coming out of India, you see low compute, the diversity,
low cost compute,
low cost compute, diversity, and you foresee, I'm just summarizing everything that you said for our audience. You foresee verticalized LLMs coming out of India in the next few years. right?
But I think you can also add, of course, whether it's AI in agriculture, whether it's AI in
Yeah,
space tech, whether
yeah,
it is AI for social good, whether you're using AI for flood forecasting, whether you're using AI, to increase the kind of yield of crops, or even just to predict, I mean, weather patterns, etc., which is already being done. So there's a flood of
yeah,
work that's being done in the field of AI that has already transformed the landscape, of India. I think
correct.
what
It's
Umakant is
starting to.
also taking,
Yeah.
yeah, it's starting to, but I
I have a
think,
question for Umakant there. I mean, I
yeah.
was just after summarizing, I just had a follow-up question. For all of these to work, Umakant, the two big entities, one is the government itself needs to come in and put its muscle and might behind it, building the ecosystem, at least triggering the ecosystem, right? And the next is, the private ecosystem itself, wherein, we have startups, we have VCs, but, we need patient capital. In innovation, I think it's there. As AI Foundry, I'm sure you're enabling some of it. But if you go out in a city of Bangalore and ask any, startup founder, they will have their own, telltale problems of, trying to get to the VC and raising funding, and how in India, the real innovation, the real this one don't get funded, only scalable models get funded. Okay. So I'm sure a lot of our audience would love to know this. How much of that is changing? I know that you and your friends and AI Foundry are on a mission to change that and working on that. But how much of that is changing in terms of the real innovation, okay, the bits and bytes level innovation is getting funded, the patient capital coming in, okay, and the other big elephant, which is the government itself, working and opening up to work on multiple fronts.
I think the one thing is that, yes, government is very receptive, whether it is MOS, Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji, or secretary, and they're very open, they invite ideas, and I think that's a fantastic thing, right? Because, we are in a serious soup. If we don't leverage AI wave to create serious assets in this wave, right, next 10 to 15 years are going to be pretty critical, right?
Mm.
And we don't end on the right side of the job displacement, so there are going to be whole number of jobs that are going to get displaced and the new jobs that are going to open up, right? So we have to be on the right side of actually getting more and more jobs which are actually going to open up, right? So I think for us, I mean, the desperation is the right word. I mean, we need to be desperate about it. The good thing that I see, and that there are early shoots, right? Some of these companies that we supported, Siktapal, Nirmai, a whole bunch of startup, Karma Life, the whole bunch of these, companies that they are a living proof that yes, good talent can come out, and if you can back them, they will create wealth. They will create some good examples on the ground. Having said that, to really exploit this big wave, you need 10 to 15 billion dollars worth of risk capital behind our startups, because the entrepreneurs are amazing. The
Yeah.
talent that I see in India is amazing, right? And it's actually in some sense, right, it's a little cruel on them, right, that we don't have that. And my sense is that for that to happen, I think government has to become an early adopter, right?
Mm.
Don't, even if you don't put a lot of money behind it yourself, right? Yes, you may be short of money, you have to urgent pressing priorities. You say that, hey, I'm going to create gem for buying AI innovations, right? And all
Mm.
startups are welcome. And I'm going to prioritize. I'm going to only buy AI that is coming out of India, right? Then the investors are going to line up and then say, yeah, there
Exactly.
is
Because in
there
the
is a
bigger scheme of
67,
things,
because Indian economy 60-70% is driven by the government, right? And 1.4 billion people, if we have to reach, then the government has to adopt these solutions, right?
in the
and
bigger
and
scheme
that's
of
where.
things, what is 10 to 15 billion dollars? I mean, in 2022, Indian startups saw 26 billion dollars being invested. What is the role that the Indian conglomerates, the Reliance's, Tata's, Adani's, are playing, or is there a role for them?
I think
Because
definitely, I think they could
No,
support,
they're
multiple
already
funds that
there.
could come out. They're doing that, their
Yeah,
bit.
they're
They're
already
trying
doing
to,
that,
set
actually. It's
up
not that they're not.
compute and other things. But see, innovation is very interesting. You need to create that rainforest method, which Silicon Valley has done. And one of the critical pieces that doesn't get talked about is the early buying of innovation by the government. I mean,
yeah,
every time people get shocked when I say, hey, Elon Musk, he got $8.5 billion worth of subsidy. I mean, whether it is
correct.
SpaceX, whether it is Tesla, Starlink, who's the early buyer? It's the government, it's the Department of Defense. They are buying it, right?
Correct.
And that allows them to say that, okay, I'm going to go and experiment. Because when they are buying, I mean, you look at Project Mavan, which is by Department of Defense, which is saying, okay, next version of cloud, we are going to buy this. There's a $10 billion project out. Now, what it does is that it sets the standard for everybody up across the globe. Because the moment, we say, hey, we're going to buy it for 1.4 billion people. I'm here with a mandate to buy AI, whether it is multilingual, whether it is, multimodal, whether it is vertical. I'm going to buy it for 1.4 billion people. Every single entrepreneur from Silicon Valley will fly in here. They'll pitch the tent outside of Bangalore because they're not going to, find their way inside Bangalore because the roads are going to get jammed, and they're going to innovate for you. And that is the flip that government can do.
Devanahalli has the new business park, tech park right now, right?
No, but on this good note, because I think I mean, there's typically this tendency of saying that the government is not doing anything. But to be fair, I mean, the government
No, I'm
has
not
done
saying
it
they're
well,
not doing
but
anything.
no, you have not said it. I'm saying typically, I mean, including the media, always says that. But in this particular case, to be fair, I think the government has done a lot. The support levels have been incredible. I know that conglomerates have been doing their bit. Could they do more? Of course, they could always do more. Everybody could do more. But I think this being an election year, given that I think I don't see much happening till June because
I see a lot happening. Unfortunately, I mean,
even I see a lot happening actually.
A lot of other things happen.
Democracies.
Exactly, but a lot of other things will happen. But I'm not too sure whether any funding, or any these kind of announcements will be made during the budget. We expect it to be a tame budget, at least at Mint. So, it's no for the special reason that given that they may not be able to make too many announcements, given that it's an interim budget. That's the reason. It's not because of anything else. So maybe the announcements
But I think
might
they should
happen.
make an exception in case of AI because the opportunity cost is massive.
No, undoubtedly, we are hoping that they make these announcements and that there'll be a continuation of all the kind of programs that we have. But I'm just saying that guess we have all seen too many interim budgets happen. So I'm not too much of an I may not be able to share the optimism that you folks have out here. But
Leslie, before you wrap up,
to do AI in India for last 15 years, you have to be eternally optimistic.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I mean,
no, but I also you have to appreciate that I have to play the role also of that fourth estate. So it's important for me. If everybody starts becoming a techno optimist.
No, absolutely. I think the fourth estate has potentially the largest role to play in this because on one side you have to moderate the enthusiasm of entrepreneurs like us and others.
Yeah, without killing without stifling. Yes, yes, absolutely.
At the same time, you have to educate the policymakers. You have to educate the masses. I mean, the masses don't know that the Lord Sri Ram's eyes, which are twinkling and smiling, right? It's not real.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a deep fake.
Yeah, maybe I can understand it. It's a deep fake, and I hope that that message is able to get across that because you could use it in very mischievous ways.
I know. Leslie, before you sign off, one last question to Umakant, and probably only Umakant can answer this. Umakant, you mentioned that the next 10-15 years are very critical for India. I mean, and we can't afford to miss this. But Professor, I remember about 10 years ago, Professor Raghuram Rajan saying that India's, this movie has been played out in India a lot of times. India has always been sitting on the cusp of opportunity, but never really grabbing and reaching its potential. Now, sorry for this negative question towards the end, Leslie, but what if we miss it, Umakant? Okay, what if we miss
it could be a double whammy because you might, see these new jobs coming in. We will not be able to get enough jobs in. At the same time, because you're going to lose the old jobs and IT and BPO sector is going to go through a massive change flip. People are going to see, massive unemployment at scale, and you don't have a population that's ready to get onto the next bus. It's a very, very tricky situation. You could actually have demographic potential turning into a demographic disaster at scale that the world has not seen. This could be a very bloody revolution.
And this may also have a cascading effect on the property prices, etc., because a lot of these tech
Everything
would
across the
have bought
economy.
it. Yeah, so that's the
Everything.
spiral effect and the
Consumption,
I mean,
yeah,
property
yeah.
prices are the last thing I'm scared about.
Exactly.
I think
Yeah, no, I'm
I'm
saying the
really scared
cascading
about
effect
people
on the
rioting
economy.
because
Yeah,
they don't have money, they
yeah,
don't have opportunities,
yeah,
they are young, restless, they are not able to find jobs, they're not able to feed
absolutely.
themselves or their families, and they don't know what has hit them. And that is the real big scary scenario for me. So that's why I say we better be desperate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
No,
that.
absolutely. I mean, point noted, I think, and I hopefully the government will also is aware of these problems. Now we are just hoping that, like that rabbit model, that rabbit device that is making waves, it will, along with the LLMs, will also have the large action model. So let's hope for
Yeah,
some
large
more
action model
LLM.
along with each of the 900 million Indians, right,
Yeah.
which are going to give this
Absolutely.
demographic dividend, right? Imagine if you have that.
Uh,
Imagine if you have
uh,
the largest AI enhanced workforce in the world. That's
absolutely.
a
Yeah,
big deal.
that's
Yeah.
You
next
could
level.
leap not, I mean, you could reach 30 trillion by 2047.
Easily. Yeah.
So great, folks. Thank you, Umakant, for making it to this podcast, and hope to get you again back on the
Yeah.
podcast for to continue our discussion and hopefully share more light on okay what more could have happened after the budget. So we'll get you after the elections now. So let's hope that some of these things come to fruition. And Jed, hope you enjoy your weekend. So we have more to talk about. And viewers
Yes.
and listeners, thanks once again.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you
Leslie.
so
Thank you,
much.
Umakant.
Thanks, Leslie. Thanks, Jen.